Alright, so in this video I'll be showing you a couple of tips on how to install your drywall much easier, giving you a little less headache, especially if you're doing this DIY, because I am also no expert in installing drywall and doing the finishing touch, because in this video it's mostly about the finishing touch and two things that people just don't talk about. Maybe 1% of people actually do this, and it's regarding the tools that you should use and also the material that you should use. And this is acoustical sealant, and whether you're doing this to actually soundproof a wall, or you're just, if this is an outside wall and you want a little bit more weatherproofing, this will also work. Now, the difference between acoustical sealant and regular caulking is acoustical sealant is not going to dry, brittle, and crack over time, which will eventually let air, cold, heat, and noise in. So there's a few places when your wall is open, when you just have your first layer of drywall on the other side installed, there's a few things that you can do. A little bit later in the video, I'll show you what we should do after the second layer of drywall is installed and where these come in and which one you should choose. But going back to the acoustical sealant. Now, as I said, acoustical sealant is like caulking, and usually people don't really think of installing caulking in between the drywall seams. Well, right here, you might think that it's completely sealed. Well, it's sealed by just one little piece of paper on the other side, a little bit of spackle, and maybe a little bit of paint. That's about it. Well, you'd want to seal this strip up to make it a little bit more soundproof and weatherproof. It's not something that costs a lot of money, and if you're already doing all of this, it's not going to require a lot of time to just add a little bit of acoustical sealant and seal this seam. Now, just pretend that these holes are not there, because that's not really good for soundproofing. Now, after doing all of the seams where the drywall connects, you should do where the drywall meets the studs. You just want to seal everything as good as possible. So using acoustical sealant at least will assure that it will remain sealed, because as I said, if you just use regular caulking, once this is all closed, you're not going to go and open it back up to redo this a few years later. After the home shifts, all the caulking will have cracked, and after a couple of years, it's just going to be cracked everywhere. But this type of acoustical sealant will not do that. It will stay the same shape, and it will keep doing its job after years. All right, so now let's pretend that your first sheet of drywall is installed. First thing that you should do is add your acoustical sealant where the next piece of drywall will connect. Now, by doing this, you're essentially doing what you did here by creating a better seal where the drywall meets the stud. All right, so now that you have your first layer of drywall all prepared, it's now time to add your second layer of drywall, and then what you'll want to do is add your acoustical sealant where the two layers of drywall meets. By doing this, you're just assuring a better seal between the two layers of drywall from the inner to the outer wall. This entire wall will be a lot better sealed for either temperature related issues or for soundproofing related issues. This acoustical sealant is from a company called Green Glue, and well, just because it's called green glue, it's not actually glue. You still have to use drywall screws. It's not glue, not glue in the sense that you think it is. Another spot that you can add this, since you already have it with you and you're doing a drywall job, you can go and add it right around your electrical outlets. Now, there's a little gap between your electrical outlet box and the drywall. So if you've done a good job and you've done good cuts and it's really tight together, then all you'll need is a little bit of acoustical sealant. Now, if the job is not so good and there's quite a gap and sealant will just not do the trick, then you can use some backer rod and just fill it in around the electrical box just to make everything tight and sealed. And then you can use some acoustical sealant to just seal the rest where the backer rod just meets the drywall and the electrical box, and put your faceplate back on, and actually there's a video right here of another little trick that you can use using putty pads. It's another little soundproofing trick, something that if you live in an apartment, it's a good trick because in an apartment there's not much that you can do regarding any types of alterations. So this is something that you can do in an apartment and bring it home with you once you move. So make sure to check out that video and also just check out my channel. All right, so now let's imagine that our wall is completely enclosed with our first layer of drywall. And the next thing on your list is to add the sparkle, to add the mud. Well, the one thing that a lot of people don't know is there's quite a difference between these two putty knives. And not only in price, because a lot of people that just doesn't know any better would just go and buy this one because this one will end up being a little bit cheaper than this one. And the reason is the end. Now, the reason why this end is almost like a hammer is because it completely saves you from walking around with this and a hammer. Because when you go and find this screw like this, you can see this one is popping out just a little bit. When you find one of those drywall screws, you would go with your hammer and you tap it in. Or you could go with your drill and just drill them in. That takes a little bit longer, but you can also go and punch it in with your putty knife. That's exactly what this is for, and it saves you a ton of time, and it saves you just having more tools with you. So that's another trick that you can use. Really appreciate you watching, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. I would love it to answer each and every one of your questions, and as I said, thanks for watching. Until next time.